So we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. as a symbol of courage. We quote his speeches, we recite his words about love and justice and our beloved community. But before the microphones and the history books, there was a night when Dr. King was not speaking to crowds. This was a night he almost quit. On this night, he was speaking to God. Dr. King later documented this moment in his book, Strides Toward Freedom. It was the night of January the 27th, 1956, in Montgomery, Alabama. Martin Luther King Jr. was 26 years old. He had been the pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church for just over 1 year, and some older ministers actually questioned whether or not he was ready for the leadership now being demanded of him. And yet, in December of 1955, after Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat, the black community of Montgomery began what became known as the Montgomery Bus Boycott. A new organization was formed to guide it, the Montgomery Improvement Association, and Dr. King was chosen as its president. That detail matters, because when the boycott began, nobody knew that it would last. No one knew if people could keep up walking for days, let alone weeks. Nobody knew whether the city would negotiate. Nobody knew whether nonviolence would hold under pressure. And nobody knew what kind of backlash would come. But by late January 1956, the boycott had become a crisis for Montgomery. It disrupted the city's economy, it drew national attention, and made some people furious. And the pressure came from every direction. King lived under a constant strain, long days, late meetings, tense negotiations, and a steady stream of threats meant to break his resolve. He later wrote that the harassment was not occasional, it was persistent, and it was personal. And what it made it heavier was that it was not only aimed at him, it was aimed at his family. So Dr. King and Coretta were newly married. Their baby daughter, Yolanda, was only a few months old. When the threats came, they didn't just target a public figure, they targeted a household, a wife, and a child. And this was not courage under a spotlight, this was fear in a quiet home. So that night, the phone rang again. Another anonymous voice warned him that if he did not leave Montgomery, his house would be bombed. And after the call, Dr. King could not sleep. He got out of bed, he went into the kitchen of his home at 309 South Jackson Street and sat at the table with a cup of coffee. And he wrote later that he was shaking. For the first time, he admitted to God that he was afraid. And in his own words, recorded in his book, he said, "I was ready to give up. I was weak. I was faltering. I had reached the point where I could not face it alone." Now, this is not a slogan. This is not a polished quote. This is a private conversation from a young pastor at the end of himself. And then he prayed out loud. He confessed, not as a civil rights icon, but as a man carrying fear, carrying responsibility, and the weight of expectation. He prayed, "Lord, I'm down here trying to do what is right, but I am afraid and I am losing my courage." And then he described what happened next. Not a dramatic spectacle, but not the removal of danger, but a quiet, steady assurance. He wrote, "At that moment, I experienced the presence of the divine as I've never experienced him before. Stand up for righteousness, stand up for justice, stand up for truth, and lo, I will be with you even until the end of the world." And notice what that voice did not say. It did not say, "You will be safe." It did not say, "It would be easy." It said, "Stand, and I will be with you." Now, this is the kind of faith that carries people through history. Not faith that removes the valley, but faith that gives you strength to walk through it. And after that prayer, King returned to his bed. His fear, it didn't disappear, but something did change. He felt as if he could face what was coming, and what was coming was real. 3 days later, on January 30th, 1956, his home was bombed. Coretta and Yolanda, they were inside, and by God's mercy, they were not harmed. When King rushed home, an angry, shaken crowd had gathered. Many were ready to respond with violence, and this was a turning point, a moment where a movement could have either held his moral ground or lose it. King stood before his damaged home and pleaded for peace. He urged the crowd to go home and to meet violence with nonviolence. And that matters because the kitchen table moment was not just about a man surviving fear. It was about a man being anchored enough to keep a movement from losing its soul. That prayer didn't just strengthen Dr. King, it helped preserve the discipline of nonviolence. So we remember Dr. King's ideas, but sometimes we forget that the discipline he required of him to live them. When your life is threatened, when your family is endangered, and when bitterness would be so much easier, Dr. King chose a different way. He chose to keep standing, to keep serving, to keep loving, not because he never felt fear, but because he did not let fear be the final voice. In 1994, Congress established the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday as a national day of service, a day on and not a day off. And that phrase fits his legacy because Dr. King did not wait to feel safe. He served while he was afraid. He led while he was pressured. He stood while he was threatened. And so when we honor Dr. King, the question is not only what we remember, the question is what will we do? Sometimes service looks like joining what's already happening, whether it's mentoring, feeding, or checking on someone or lifting a burden, but doing the quiet work with faithfulness. But sometimes service looks like refusing to step back from what is right, even when it would be easier. And Dr. King's kitchen table moment reminds us that the path of justice is not powered by hype. It's powered by commitment. It's powered by prayer, by endurance, and by the decision to stand again. So today, we remember Dr. King not as a man who never trembled, but as a man who trembled and still stood. And we honor him not just with our words, but with service, with courage, and with the faith that says, even in the hardest of moments, I will stand for righteousness, I will stand for justice, I will stand for truth, but I will not stand alone. Thank you.